Understood Pandora's box to be a jar. It was only in the 16th century with Erasmus, probably through a mistranslation, that the jar was transferred over to what we think of now as Pandora's box. The jar was given to Pandora on her wedding day, and she was told not to open it. Like many women across the centuries, she was consumed with curiosity, and she couldn't resist opening it. And when she did so, all of the evils in the world flew out. So disease, plague, famine, anything bad you can think of basically came out. The one secret key is that hope stayed inside Pandora's jar. Hope is what gives humans the kind of will to go on living, to keep looking forward to the future.
And then there's an ambiguity that there's one thing left in the jar, which is hope. Now, some people would say that this is actually, oh, it's so sad human beings don't have hope. And so everything bad got out and the one good thing stayed in the jar. In the Greek mind, actually, hope isn't necessarily always a positive thing. It might lead you to look for something that you don't have. And so the idea is that you're always hoping for a future that's never going to come, or hoping for some change that will never come.
Pandora's box is great because it contains all of the evils, known to man. They're all locked up in one place. So you've got hate, you've got greed, you've got suffering and pain all inside of this box, and Kratos opens it up, and he manifests itself into him turning into a giant. And at that point, he's got the strength to take Ares on. Athena knew that this was essentially the ultimate weapon. It was a nuke, if you will, in Greek mythology.
But acquiring Pandora's mythical box is not going to be an easy task for Kratos.
The box exists. It is the most powerful weapon a mortal can wield. With the box, many things become possible, and so it is hidden well, far across the desert of lost souls. There is safe passage through the deadly sands, but only those who hear and follow the siren's song will discover it. Only they can guide you to Kronos, the Titan.
A Titan lives?
Kronos is the last. Zeus has commanded him to wander the desert endlessly, the temple of Pandora chained to his back, until the swirling sands rip the very flesh from his bones.
The Titans were powerful deities who were overthrown by a younger race of gods known as the Olympians in what's known as the Great War.
The most famous of the Titans is Kronos, the father of Zeus. And the problem is that Kronos understands that Zeus will also have to depose him. It's basically a cycle of violence that's going on in the early history of Greek mythology, where son always overthrows father. So Kronos has this problem, which he has to stop his own son, Zeus, from overthrowing him. So he decides to swallow all his children. And by swallowing them, he hopes that they'll never see the light of day, never really be born.
Rhea, the wife of Cronus, having seen all of her children already been devoured, wanted to save at least one. And she does this with Zeus. She replaces his body, right before Cronus is about to devour him, with a large stone, wraps it in blankets, and he devours this stone in place of Zeus. So she can take Zeus to a safe place where he can grow into power, become strong, and one day come back and usurp his father for power, thus starting off the Great War.
After a series of challenges, puzzles, and traps in the temple, Kratos finally reaches the mythical box of Pandora. At his disposal is now the only way a human can defeat a god. But Ares is not about to let a mere mortal crush a god.
So, little Spartan, you've recovered Zeus's precious box, but you will not live long enough to see it opened. I will see to that. Goodbye, Spartan. You will rot in the depths of Hades for all eternity.
And with his death, Kratos is sent to the depths of the underworld and into the realm of the Dark Lord Hades.
Hades is the god of the underworld, and we also call the underworld Hades. It's a kind of a shorthand for the house of Hades. He is both the underworld and the god who represents the underworld.
He was the lord of all the souls in the underworld, of every single living being that died. And he got this position when he and his fellow brothers, Zeus and Poseidon, after they won the Great War, they had to figure out a way how they were gonna split up the world. Zeus took the skies, Poseidon got the seas, and Hades got everything underneath. He got the underworld.
Hades' grip on Kratos, however, was not eternal, but short-lived.
Ah, Kratos. And not a moment too soon. I only finished digging just a moment ago.
Who are you?
Now that is an interesting question.
The old man that helps Kratos is Zeus, and Zeus's whole purpose is to guide Kratos to defeat Ares, because Ares is out of control. He's on a wreck-loose crash course, and Zeus doesn't really know what to do with him, and he's concerned that maybe Ares has ideas on getting Zeus's throne for himself.
In God of War 1, there was definitely the problem of Ares taking out the city of Athens, and I think Ares was a threat to the pantheon of gods. Ares had kind of gone crazy with power and bloodlust, and the gods were worried.
So even though the gods are very, very powerful, they still need to take on the form of humans sometimes in order to kind of steer the course of events in human affairs. They can't just will something to happen and have it happen. So we often get examples of the gods taking on human form and coming down to human beings and either advising them or tricking them in some way in order to try and steer the events in the direction they want them to go.
Most of the gods meddle in human affairs in one way or another. To do so, they have to assume mortal form. A god can't be seen by a human in his true grandeur. The human would die. It's very much like the Judeo-Christian tradition. You cannot see the face of God and live.
In Greek mythology, when you die, you go to the underworld. You're supposed to be dead before you go there, but it's a special marker of particularly exceptional Greek heroes that they can actually go to the underworld when they're alive.
The name for the journey to the underworld is actually katabasis. It means a going down, because they envisioned that the underworld was literally a place beneath the earth. Most people thought that if you go to the underworld, you're not going to come back. So only a few select heroes are able to negotiate the journey, because it's dangerous and it's scary. It requires you kind of staying within yourself.
There's a number of instances where classical Greek heroes venture into the underworld and return. They seek out typically the advice of spirits who've passed on, or sometimes even to speak with Hades himself. There was no sense of real finality in going into the underworld.
And so this obviously is pretty different from what we think of in a biblical tradition, where once your soul departs from your body, it can't get back in and you can't come back.
With his resurrection from the depths of Hades, Kratos opens Pandora's box.
The monster you've created has returned to kill you.
And challenges Ares to become the only mortal to defeat a god. After fulfilling the mission as set forth by Athena and the gods, Kratos discovers that with all that he has been through and done, it will simply never be enough.
We promised your sins would be forgiven, and so they are. But we never promised to take away your nightmares. No man, no god could ever forget the terrible deeds you have done.
Guilt runs as a theme throughout all of Greek mythology, epic, and tragedy. It's a driving force. But for Greeks, it's not the sense of personal horror and regret that we tend to think of it. It's a much more objective concept, even physical.
So we often see Greek tragic characters having to deal with the consequences of the terrible things that they've done, either knowingly or unknowingly. And You know, in our society, we would use the term guilt to describe the kind of the psychological burden that you carry around with you after this. Often, what we would think of as internal demons are imagined by the Greeks as external, real external gods.
And so how we could see this is that in an old tragedy by Aeschylus, after Orestes kills his mother, he's hounded by these dog-like old hags called Furies, and everybody can see them. They're on stage, they're abominations. And the way he gets clean from having killed his mother, it's literally he has to be purified by the gods.
Consumed by despair and unable to forgive himself, Kratos throws himself from the highest cliff in Greece. To him, death is the only escape from the nightmares. But the goddess Athena had other plans for the powerful warrior.